Oh, it's Jinder's Gear Reviews.
All right, hi folks, welcome back to another edition of Jinder's Gear Reviews with me, Jinder. I'm doing a series of these reviews talking about the instruments and equipment, tools of the trade that I love, and the things that have seen me through for the last 23 odd years as a full-time picker and grinner and singer and general musical handyman. So today I would like to talk about an instrument or a group of instruments that I've been most widely associated with over the years. It's very uncommon to see me on stage without a Gibson acoustic guitar in my hands. These have been the guitars that have sort of shaped me as an artist and that have shaped the sound of my records over the years. When I started out as a working musician in the late 1990s, I had a Gibson Les Paul Standard electric guitar. My teenage guitar hero was Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin, as I'm sure most of us can sort of relate to that. And so I got hold of this stunning cherry sunburst Gibson Les Paul Standard electric guitar, which saw me through for years and years. And then when I started doing more solo work, more acoustic based kind of rootsy stuff, I played a Takamine guitar for a little while, which I've reviewed previously. I still have that many years later. But eventually ended up playing, in fairly short order, a Gibson acoustic guitar. Started out with a Gibson SJ200, which was my main touring guitar for a very long time, 8 or 9 years, and eventually wore it out and replaced it in one thing and another. Others have come and sort of flown in and out over the years. This one here is a stunning 1967 Gibson J45 acoustic guitar, which actually belongs to my friend Alvin Reed, who used to be mine some years ago. And as I explained in my review of this guitar previously, I had to sell it, sold it to a friend who sold it to another friend of mine, when we all ran out of money, and eventually when my friend Deborah Greenwood, who I record with regularly, she had to sell it to fund some vet's bills for her horse. It was sold to my friend Alvin Reed, who allows me to use it for writing and recording and stuff. So thank you, Alvin. This is a great example of a Gibson acoustic guitar, and part of what I love about Gibsons is they have a feel to them. They have a certain tactility where the necks all kind of have a fairly consistent carve. This one has a skinny 1 9/16 inch nut width, but I have no trouble with that, even with my great big shovel hands. There's something about the feel of these guitars, the weight of them, the smell of them, the texture of them. Even before you play a note, you put them in your lap and they feel right. This is the thing. And this is 53 years old, this guitar, and it's a wonderful example of what a Gibson acoustic guitar is. They have a compression to them where the harder you play them, the more they kind of absorb the force of your playing, and they get louder, but they don't become more brash. Now, this is something that's unique to Gibsons. I find that Martins are wonderful guitars. I had a Martin D18 Golden Era prototype, which was one of the most beautiful sounding guitars I've ever played. It now belongs to my friend Richard Trippick, who does a wonderful job of playing it as well. But this particular characteristic tends to occur in Gibsons far more than Martins. I find with Martins, the harder you play them, they get louder to a point, and then they start to become a little bit more brash. Whereas Gibsons, they absorb it, and they have this kind of natural compression. I don't know what it's down to, the bracing or the way they're put together. But if you listen, I'll play with my nails. You can hear. At that point, I'm exerting some serious force on the strings. I'm hitting it as hard as you're going to want to hit an acoustic instrument, and it just absorbs it and gets louder and bigger. But it seems to attenuate the very high end. It doesn't choke out. It doesn't buzz. It doesn't do any of the nasty stuff that I mean, no disrespect to Taylor guitars, but every Taylor I've played has the opposite effect. The harder you hit it, the more brash it gets and the more harsh it gets, and that's not something that works for me as a player. Something I love about Gibsons is they're quite forgiving, and you don't feel you have to fight a Gibson. finger style. You know, I'm sort of. You know, I'm not playing it particularly hard. I'm just sort of stroking it, and the tone is there. It comes out and sort of avails itself of you. Now, something that Gibson often have levelled at them is quality control issues. Now, this in my experience is a complaint that's been ported over from problems that they had with their electric guitar manufacturing process, which was mainly in Nashville and Memphis. The electric guitar plants. I mean, I've picked up Gibson electric guitars that have been made in the last 15 years and played them in shops, and I found them, they have neck angle issues. They have, you know, kind of the bridges are screwed all the way down, and yet the action's still too high, and intonation issues, all of this kind of stuff. By and large, I mean, I've played probably hundreds of Gibson acoustic guitars that have been made over the last 20 to 25 years. The Bozeman plant in Montana. In fact, 22 years, no more than that, 32 years, they've been made in Montana. It's currently 2020, and they started making guitars there. They moved their operation there in 88, and they started making them in 89. And Ren Ferguson is the luthier that's responsible for the retooling of the line at the Bozeman plant. Basically, he came in, and for probably about 20 years, Gibson had been under the auspices of a company called Norlin, who basically took over Gibson in 68, 69, around that period. And this guitar is a 67, so this is kind of the last of the line of the great early Gibsons. By 68, they'd beefed up the bracing. By 69, they'd gone to square shoulders rather than the curvy sort of basin-shaped round shoulder dreadnought design on the J45. They went to square shoulders, much like a Martin, and they introduced double X bracing, which basically most guitars have a single X across the body, the belly of the sound hole, as it were, the lower bout, I suppose you would say, which allows the guitar to ring and resonate very freely. But the double X bracing was to avoid warranty claims. Basically, they introduced it, and all of a sudden, these previously very kind of light and sort of airy resonant guitars were quite overbraced, and often some of them survived. I've played some mid-70s Gibson gospel guitars that had a laminated arched maple back, and the arched braceless maple back really helped to overcome the sort of choking effect of the double X bracing. And the gospels are actually a fantastic guitar if you can get your hands on one of those, but the rest of the Gibson line suffered, in my opinion, due to the double X bracing. There are some gems from that period. I've played some good guitars from that time, but much less consistently. You can pick up a mid-60s, 60, you know, anything up to a 67 J45 like this, and chances are it will sound very good. You know, they're a very consistent guitar. But when the double X bracing came in, you were relying on an extraordinary piece of wood to overcome, you know, top wood or whatever, to overcome this choking effect of the heavy double bracing. But Mr. Ren Ferguson, wonderful luthier of renown who now works for Fender. As of the last couple of years, he's revamped the Guild line of acoustics, which are now owned by Fender, and he's doing a great job there. But he saved Gibson as an acoustic guitar manufacturer almost single-handedly, and they went from, you know, building sort of guitars in what was left of the Kalamazoo, Michigan facility where this guitar was built. By the late 80s, they were struggling there, and Ren Ferguson came in, retooled the entire operation, moved it to Bozeman in Montana, where the ambient humidity and temperature were much more workable for guitar manufacturing. And he sort of instituted this thing in the factory where guitars were bench built again. And I owned a 1990 Gibson Hummingbird acoustic, which was a solo bench built by Ren Ferguson himself, and it was an exquisite guitar, absolutely wonderful. It's now owned by my friend Paul Brett, but that guitar had a Brazilian rosewood fretboard and bridge, and was a solo bench built by Ren Ferguson, and was just absolutely exquisite. Just such a deep, rich, broad, huge sounding guitar. Wonderful guitar. And quite a bit of my album The Silver Age was written with that guitar, and it's testament to Ren Ferguson that these guitars from 1989 onwards are extraordinarily consistent. I've played very, very, very few acoustic guitars from that timeline, the last 31 years or so, that haven't pleased me in some way, that haven't thrilled me or excited me, or just that I've picked up and not been able to go, that's a great guitar, I really like that guitar. So yeah, hats off to Ren Ferguson for doing that. In fact, I have just to my left here an example of Ren Ferguson's handiwork. Now this guitar is a 1995 Gibson Dove, and this guitar I bought a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. It's got a ball end from a string rattling around in it. I bought this guitar for next to nothing. It was so cheap because it has some cosmetic damage. It has a lot of lacquer cracking. I don't know if you can see that in the top as well. There's lines all over the guitar. The bridge has been changed slightly clumsily. I don't know whether you can see the cutaway, where the luthier who did it, who made the bridge, is cut into the top, and there's some overspray and everything. And because it's not original, I got this guitar for very, very, very little money, and it's just a great kind of broad sounding guitar, tremendously balanced. It's got loads and loads of niceties going on with the sounds of. And you can hear the difference there between a guitar that's 53 years old and a guitar that's 25 years old. This guitar is fatter and warmer, less dry, just different. The J45 is a wonderful vintage guitar. This is kind of a middle-aged guitar, and I find this guitar records incredibly well. Now, something that sets this guitar, I will do a full review on this guitar at some point, but something that sets this guitar apart from the J45, this also has a Sitka spruce top, but it has maple back and sides. You can see there's some pretty fancy flame effect going on there. If I turn it into the light, it's hard to pick this up on camera, really three-dimensional flame effect. And I have gravitated towards mahogany and maple, predominantly maple Gibsons over the years, because there's something about the EQ curve of a maple Gibson where it's got a preponderance of great kind of meaty sort of bass thing going on, and this lovely kind of treble. Treble response going on, but there's something about the EQ curve of a maple Gibson with a Sitka spruce top that sits in the mix when you record, where your vocal, or my vocal specifically, I have quite a mid-rangey, I'm a light tenor, and my voice is a little bit kind of sort of mid-rangey, kind of there, kind of lower mid-heavy, kind of plump person voice as I am. And there's a notch in the EQ curve of a maple Gibson which allows, in a mix, my voice just to go straight into that slot, into that notch in the EQ curve. And that's another reason why I love Gibson guitars. I can't get that same effect with a Martin. The only Martins I've ever found that I can get that effect with is a D45 or a Martin called a 00DB, which is a Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, Jeff Tweedy's signature guitar. I owned one of those for a little while, and that was just wonderful, and that got out of the way of my vocal in a beautiful way. But something like a D28 doesn't quite do that in the same way. A D18 doesn't do it in the same way. Even like a D45, the really expensive ones made of the really whiz-bang tone woods and all the abalone and all that lot, you get up to that sort of expense, they don't do it. The D35 does it because it has three-piece back, which allows for lighter bracing, and the back resonates more, so you get like a big chunk of bass in the sound, and like a nice sort of hot treble kind of tone. But in general, Gibsons do it. My J200 does it. This guitar does it. The J45 does it. Mahogany brings a little bit more mid-range in, but it still has that notch where my voice can sit. Hummingbirds do it. Advanced jumbos to some extent do it as well. It's a really nice feature, which makes these guitars, certainly for a male vocalist, a wonderful guitar to sing with. And there's something about the necks as well. I mean, this guitar has a 1 11/16 nut width, or this is the slightly earlier Bozeman spec being 1995. The later ones went to 1.725 inches, but this is 1 11/16. The J45 is 1 9/16. But the necks just feel like home. You can pick up a Gibson anywhere in the world, and generally they kind of have a real consistency of feel, which is a really nice thing. The whole quality control thing, I think, for the Bozeman era guitars is a little bit of a myth when it comes to the acoustic guitars. I've played a lot of them, and they are generally quite consistent instruments. I think as consistent as any manufacturer can be. So yeah, that's just a little insight into why I love Gibson acoustic guitars. They take pickups very well as well. I use sound hole pickups generally, and this is a Seymour Duncan mag mic pickup, which I will do a proper review of because it is a fantastic pickup. I mainly use Sunrise sound hole pickups, but this mag mic is excellent. It has a little condenser capsule in it, and you can roll in and roll out the mic from the main mix with the magnetic pickup all on board. It's a very cool bit of engineering. These guitars sound great through these pickups. K&K pickups. I've got a K&K Pure Mini in the J45 and in my Hummingbird 12 string as well. They sound great through those. They're very, very good guitars. Easy to amplify, easy to use, and also, if you come for the tone, you can stay for the bling. Look at that. I once saw one of these advertised on Reverb. It was an automatically translated listing from a German seller, and the auto translate had listed it as a Gibson pigeon, which amused me massively. But yeah, it's got a lovely mother of pearl dove on the scratch plate and hand painted inlays. These glorious parallelogram, split parallelogram, mother of pearl jobbies and all of that. You can really see, if I get up close, you can see the lacquer damage on the headstock there. All of the reason why I snagged this for very, very little coin indeed. And an aftermarket Dove inlaid truss rod cover there as well. So yeah, a little insight into why I love Gibson guitars, Gibson acoustic guitars specifically. This is the thing that, I've played so many guitars over the years, and I've tried so many different makes, but I always come back to Gibson. I always come back to my J200, the J45, a Dove, a Hummingbird, that kind of thing. That's my sort of home spot for me. So what I will do on that note is I will play you out with a little bit of strumming, picking and grinning with this old bird. So I will say, if you like what you've seen in this video, please check out my other gear reviews. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like to keep in touch with what I'm up to musically and in terms of gear reviews and whatnot. There's always new music coming out and new reviews being put up and all of that lot. So I will hope to hear from you very soon. And feel free, if you want to debate about Gibsons or anything like that, stick your opinions in the comments and we'll have a bit of a to and fro.